It's being recorded. Hi, Nick. Nice meeting
Hey,
you, and
great to meet you.
thank you very much for joining us in the conference. Maybe you want to shortly introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Nick Merrill. I direct the Daylight Security Research Lab at the UC Berkeley Center for Long-Term Cybersecurity. Very broadly, we push on kind of the way security is represented and understood. And in the context of this conversation, one of the things we did is fund artists who were looking on pushing the representations of cybersecurity forward through artworks.
Nice. And this is very, of course, very interesting to us in the Starts initiative. We've been working, as you know, already a bit. We've been working in bringing artists in all sorts of research in technology, all areas of technology. And being you a specialist in cybersecurity, right? And cybersecurity now becoming fashionable, because it's even with the pandemic, it's been an issue to many people, and there's a lot of things going on. So the discourse gets a little bit broad. Do you think that everybody is really knowing what they're saying, or there's a lot of what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned cybersecurity being fashionable. I think one of the things we like to think about is, who exactly finds it fashionable, right? Is it fashionable? I mean, there are. It's definitely like, people are interested in government. People are interested in the corporate sector about security. It's fashionable in those circles, but younger people, or people who are coming from backgrounds that aren't typically represented in security, women, people of color. Do they find security fashionable? Is it something that they feel
Mm-hmm.
get involved in? Something that they feel they want to get involved in? I think, security is something cool, but we don't want it to just seem like it's this corporate thing, it's this government thing. It could be something iconoclastic. It could be something rebellious. And it could be something virtuous, right? It could be something civic-minded. So I think that these are the kinds of questions that we want to kind of push on driving, looking toward that next generation of people who are getting involved in cybersecurity, driving their interest.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. When I was referring to it being factional, is because, in my circles, which basically public policy making, nowadays cybersecurity is really important. There's a lot of things going on in the European institutions, a lot of measurements being taken, a lot of new systems being put in place. And that's why the conversation sometimes is, from my point of view, generalized, because you have people like myself that never worked in cybersecurity and think they have a say, right? But I like your point on how to attract other people and make it attractive to other people that not necessarily are forced to deal with it, like policymakers or other corporate actors. So people that have to deal with that because it's part of the jobs. But we know that, we know I have the intuition, but I would like to know from you, because you're the specialist, if would I be right saying that human error, or some sort of like the human in the chain, is very much a question in cybersecurity issues? That is not all just about machine.
Absolutely, yeah. Cybersecurity is, I think, only secondarily about machines. Cybersecurity is primarily about people, and it's about social institutions. That is cybersecurity. You know, Technical stuff plays a role. I guess that makes it different from security without the cyber modifier, right? But it's primarily a question of people. And often human error, people think, oh, people are making mistakes, and that causes security issues. Another kind of aspect here is that designers make mistakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Designers make systems that encourage certain types of errors.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of messaging, especially visual messaging, but really all kinds of messaging and representation, that has a lot to do with security too. And design, it strongly impacts the kind of decisions people make. More than that, it tends to stick around, right? Once something's designed, it's there for kind of a long time, and a lot of people use it. So, changing stuff at that design place, right?
Uh-huh.
Modifying it at design time, that has this outsized impact. And a lot of cybersecurity stuff is like basically going around lecturing people on what they should be doing. right? And saying, don't click on links on emails. And you go around to everyone in the industry, don't never click on links. But I click on links on emails all the time. You click on links. Everyone clicks on links and emails, right? That's just something people do. So it's not really up to educating every end user. It's not this individual responsibility mindset that we're trying to get at. That doesn't work. If that worked, we'd be done already. But we're not done already, right? So we're looking a step above that. Design, design time, and even a step above that at the representation, the things that are in the waters, the things that are in the zeitgeist, to let people know what security is and what security can be. That's what we're trying to get at. That's upstream of all of this other stuff that we care about. So we're trying to modify stuff, the design and representation side, and hopefully this percolates through so that people, as you say, know what they're talking about, know what they need to be talking about, that it kind of reduces these errors that come from kind of misunderstandings.
That's very interesting, because that you put a lot of pressure in the human interaction, human-computer interaction there. And I was thinking while you were presenting these very, very important ideas that in many meetings I go, we talk about security by design, in systems design and so on. But I think we could here talk about design for security, right? Because
that's a good important distinction. That's an interesting distinction.
Because according to what you're saying, it's really important to lead people not to make mistakes, and that is part of that human-computer interaction. And talking about that, recently we did recently, like in 2018, or like 2 years ago almost, we did a talk in the European Parliament about cybersecurity and aspects of cybersecurity in IoT, and the notion also of that cybersecurity is a very interesting place, because it's a place where civilians and military meet, because things overlap. So there's a lot of collaboration that goes into both sides. But the artist that was there speaking, Jaromil Royo, who's a very famous artist and also very active in the hacking community, he was referring to this idea, this notion that that he misses cybernetics in cybersecurity, meaning the notion of chains of machines and humans and so on. Do you think this is valid, and do you think this is a trend? How do you see this?
Right. Humans and machines are entangled already. Always have been, right? We build machines to use. So humans and machines are like this, right? We cannot separate them. They've never been separable. So, technical systems have always been cyber-physical, I think. Security is no exception. It's always been cyber-physical.
Okay.
Just like the social and technical are always entangled, right? All of these supposedly technical systems are actually embedded in larger socio-technical systems. Otherwise, that's the only thing that gives these technical systems legibility and use. They only become relevant in the context of these larger socio-technical systems. So I always advocate for a socio-technical frame with security and with everything else, with any kind of analysis. If you're focusing on technical systems alone, you're missing, I would say, the parts that matter, right? We make technical modifications and we engage in technical practice to achieve certain social and political ends, and for no other reason.
Okay. And what's the role of artists in all these contexts?
That's a good question. Short answer, right? And maybe I'll take it back to the beginning. So short answer, we were really tired of the visuality around cybersecurity. We get these ones and zeros, there are these green padlocks, stuff going down the screen like this.
Matrix.
The Matrix, exactly. This visuality has not changed since the original Matrix film came out in 1999. Okay?
Yeah,
and think of everything that's happened in the world since then, right? I mean, we can talk about all the technical stuff, but like 9/11, right? I mean, really, the world has changed dramatically since this visuality came out. And this visuality is lagging in a world that is pre-smartphone, pre-IoT, pre-ransomware, pre-blockchain, whatever you want to say, right? You could list all of these technical innovations. The technical innovations themselves are not necessarily relevant, but they lag behind our lived experience of technology day to day, right? It's not how we experience it, just in the visuality lags. So we wanted to open it up. We decided also, I'm talking a lot about visuality here. We decided it's really all of these representations are lagging. Audio too is very trapped in like the 1980s. When you think about cybersecurity, it's like
Uh-huh.
computers don't actually make these sounds. Maybe they never did, right? So we wanted to push on security's representations broadly, but I think visuality is something we're all familiar with because we've all seen The Matrix. So the idea here is that new representations open up new ways of thinking. We're trapped in our ways of thinking because of representations. The example I always like to use, this is a little bit US specific, but every American of my age remembers this, and I will let you in on it too. Back in the 1990s, there was a senator from Alaska named Ted Stevens, and he was trying to explain the internet in front of the Senate, and he described it as a series of tubes. Okay, and this is like this very, very famous thing in the US because it's just really naive understanding what the internet was. But if you go through around the 1990s and you look at the internet and you Google phrases like the information superhighway, you see all this visuality that is tubes. There are tubes everywhere, right? But
Yeah.
he didn't pull this from nowhere. I mean, he was looking at Time magazine and there it says the information superhighway and there are a bunch of tubes. So you think the internet's a series of tubes. I mean, we rely on visuality. Policymakers rely on representations to make decisions.
Absolutely.
So we're trying to make these, it's not, better is kind of underspecified here, but we're trying to make representations of security that help people make more relevant decisions. They're more relevant representations of cybersecurity. It's not just a guy in a hoodie going like this. That doesn't help you make a decision, right? So we opened it up to artists. And artists, the role that they play is kind of acting like a probe. They're trying to figure out, what are these representations that are just on the periphery that we have access to, that we can open up to. And, in our experience, the artists like way delivered. And it also, not only did they deliver, it showed us that we needed them to do it. We couldn't have done it ourselves. So we got stuff like, we have stuff about cybersecurity in the African context. Ima Ayer and Shana Robinson did this amazing kind of mockumentary about cybersecurity in Uganda and kind of what this is like. It really opens your eyes to security out of the non-Western, global South, this kind of context. It's very, very different, right? This is a new kind of representation. And, we have kind of meditations on virtual assistants and intimate environments. Lauren McCarthy did some work on this. Greg Niemeyer and some of his collaborators did a music video that's kind of, an abstract representation of hacker and defender. And that video has this completely new kind of visuality. You can check it out. This is all available on our website, so you can check it out. I'm sure we can talk. So, and there's music that goes along with that that's also completely different from the bleeps and bloops that you've heard. So, they really delivered on what we hoped. And now that we're getting this message out there, we're pushing this out. We're hoping this is going to be, a new reference point, a new anchor.
Very nice. Sounds really, really interesting. And I'm wondering, while listening to you, this relationship with artists had a direct impact in your team, in the way you yourselves make these representations of what you're dealing with.
It's funny. We were as soon as we got this music video in particular, we were looking, we were looking through it, and one of my coworkers, Ann Cleveland, said, "Oh, this would be a perfect cover for one of our reports." It's just like, once you get a taste of something that's a little bit different, it's like, it's magic, and it opens up this way of communicating that. And cynically, right, as CLTs, and we're research, Daylight Lab is situated in Center for Long-Term Cybersecurity, and we want to distinguish ourselves among all the other people studying cybersecurity. And visuality is a way to do that. So there's this, cynical component to it that's like, yeah, of course it feeds in. It gives us something unique where we push it out there. But, ultimately, really, our hope is that this isn't unique. Our hope is that we're setting a new standard. And yeah, we'll be the first to engage in that standard. And there's a reputational benefit to our having done that. But we really do have a pro-social goal here. So as much as it does feed into our work, we're hoping that as we get our work out through the usual channels, we're pushing out those representations along with it.
Yeah. So, but it's clear to you that it's not just a communication exercise, right? There's some sort of so it's not you're not pushing these only towards your networks. My previous question was also, did it have an impact on the way you think cybersecurity, on the way your team yes, did it bounce back? Because our experience some of our experiences in Europe by having artists in research projects. And in some cases, they radically changed the course of a specific research project, or they unlocked a little a little step that was missing because they were seeing things from a different plan. I give you a concrete example. We had a artist in residency in a project that was trying to make systems that control plants to make architecture, and they were not communicating very well with the plants. And the artists came and said, so our work is about listening to plants, so why don't you listen to plants first and then you communicate with them? And that worked perfectly. So any stories of these with the interaction of the artists?
Yeah, that's a great example. You know, for me, the example I would kind of probably go to first is the cybersecurity in the African context. You know, if you had asked me what cybersecurity is like in Uganda, I would have said, oh, you know, it's probably a growing issue. You know? Like, oh yeah, digital penetration is probably increasing there, and this is something that they will have to deal with. And maybe they're ill-prepared, right? What I actually found is much more complex stories. Security is a huge issue in Uganda. It's enacted differently. It's enacted through fundamentally different social practices. It relies on cultural practices on the ground, the way you interact with people in public and marketplaces and stuff like that. It's enacted through kind of different relationships with one's phone, SIM cards. Mobile banking is really big in Uganda and other countries in sub-Saharan Africa. You know, mobile banking and M-Pesa is this really big force, mobile payment. You know, this is a really important vector for security, vector for attack. You know, these kinds of the subtlety that it adds to my thinking helps me reinterpret what happens on the ground here, right? Because suddenly I know security is socially situated, of course, it's deeply embedded in my training, I get that. But when I see something in a different context, I get an intuition for the degree to which what I consider to be cybersecurity is actually an emergent property of kind of enacted practices, the way I do business, the way I am in public, right? My expectations about strangers. All of these things inform what security appears to be to me. So this really does help my thinking in a very direct way. And again, you know, me personally, I'm thinking about representations, right? I'm thinking about how security is represented. So when I see it in a different context, I get a lot more clarity about the contextual nature of what I consider to be security already. And when I go to someone else, even in the European context, it's very different. Your expectations about strangers as a European are very different from mine.
Yes, absolutely.
When you go in public, no one has a gun. That's a security issue I think about. I
see. Very interesting. Well, thank you very much for your time and for your insightful thoughts. And these results you have with the artists, you made exhibitions as well. They ready to be shown? That you've shown them?
I would have to check with the artists, but I'm almost certain that they are.
Super. So maybe we could tour you in Europe, maybe to exchange a little bit more in our cultural practices in cybersecurity, I guess.
I think that sounds great.
Super. Again, thank you for your time, and we keep in touch for next steps. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.